What's up, y'all? You are listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we have previewed the ACC. We've made our way to the Big 12. We're recording this in the middle of SEC Media Days, Big 10 Media Days up next. It really feels like football season. World Cup is over. Congrats to Spain. Turn the page. I mean, it's not like it felt crisp in the air, but mentally, it feels crisp in the air that football is close. And excited to talk some Big 12 football today. Big 12, probably the conference with the most, outside of Texas Tech, potentially, most parity in the sport. You and I were talking pre-show about how when you're tiering these teams, Daniel almost went like 3 tiers total in the Big 12, with one of them maybe being Texas Tech by itself. I mean, it's just, it's a big middle. Yeah. And that makes it a lot of fun. You could tell me odds-wise, Iowa State has the lowest odds to win the conference. But if you told me they finished 6th in the conference, I don't think I'd really bat an eye. Like, I think you can kind of go 4 to 16 and give me any order, and I'll be like, yeah, sure. Like, why not? So the Big 12 is fun. Excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, I agree. They should probably change it to the Big Middle Conference, something like that, because they're kind of taking up the middle of the United States and a bunch of middle teams, and you can't spell middle without mid, and that's where we're at with the Big 12. So the Monster Energy Big 12 Conference.
Yeah, they're not paying us to say that though. So with all due respect,
nobody's paying us to say anything, so I'll say what I'd like as long as it mocks those that are making the money.
It's just funny with that because it's like, again, ESPN will probably have to say it because of contract stuff and sponsorships, but it's like any of the other, like when they're being broadcast on TV, but any other media outlet is not being paid to call it the Monster Energy. So it's like,
right.
It's just also highway. That should have been one of our top storylines, Daniel. Highway robbery at $20 million. Apparently, it came out that Oklahoma, I don't know what company it was, but a company offered them $5 million just by themselves for just a jersey patch, and they're paid $20 million for jersey patches for every team on every field being called the Monster. It's just a highway robbery, but also it kind of shows you where the Big 12 is financially compared to the Big 10 and SEC, and why I think it will continue to be a power 2 and middle 2 with the ACC and Big 12 outside of a few teams. Daniel, we're going to do a few things. We're going to talk top storylines of the Big 12, what's going on, what you need to know for this upcoming season. We're going to hit all win totals, go over, under every team in the Big 12, their win totals. And then at the end here, we'll hit our best bets for the Big 12, our conference championship game, who plays in it, who wins it, what dark horse should we be looking out for in the Big 12. I feel like we can't talk about the Big 12 or start talking about the Big 12 without starting with Texas Tech. Here on this podcast, we've not had a lot of time to publicly talk about the whole Brandon Sorsby situation, but this will be a good catch-all to, now that it's all over with, to put a bow on it and talk about Texas Tech. Look, Texas Tech, for the right and wrong reasons, is still the story in the Big 12. Here's a question I have, Daniel. How much do they trust Will Hammond? Because to put a bow on the Sorsby situation, they went through a lot of public crap to not play Will Hammond. Is kind of how I have framed it. In that, all this effort for supporting the player and all this other stuff. I'm like, dude, Hammond's been on your roster. Sorsby was in your building for what, 6 months? You're doing all this stuff for him? No, it's because they thought Sorsby gave them the best chance to win. And I think prior to Sorsby, Texas Tech probably a lock to go 11-1, 12-0. They turned the page. Where do they go from here? Texas Tech is loud. They are proud. They've got big oil money. They're proud of it. They're not hiding it. They know exactly what they're doing. They're throwing money at players. And again, they're proud of it. And they're throwing tortillas in the air to celebrate it, except that's illegal now. So can't do that. They'll be fine. Which, guess what? They're probably fine to pay it, but I do think it's a penalty in the game if they do get called for it. So all that effort to avoid playing Will Hammond, now he's their guy. But here's the thing. You mentioned this on a previous episode, Daniel. Will Hammond is an effective quarterback, and he played really well in backup duty in the last 2 years. He's a very effective runner. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards. he is recovering from an ACL injury. And I think that is my question is not with Will Hammond, the player. It is Will Hammond post ACL injury, because I do think that running the ball is the thing he does best as a quarterback. And that with their two backs they bring back, they have like a chance to have a really elite running game, because they're going to be playing behind the best offensive line in the Big 12. And honestly, Daniel, Texas Tech is the best roster at every position group minus quarterback in the Big 12. They're the deepest roster by far. They do drop in Bill Connolly's returning production without Sorsby, because it does account for production you bring in with transfers. They're going to be in like the mid-20s, which is third in the Big 12. But again, for a roster that was the best in the Big 12, it will continue to be the best in the Big 12. They once again bring in like an enormous transfer haul. Yeah, the offense should be a power running offense. The offensive line, we saw this last year, will be good enough to be the best in the Big 12. If I'm, again, being critical of Texas Tech, it's they looked completely outclassed when they played better competition in Oregon in the Big 12 championship game, where Oregon was continuously getting pressure with 4. They get beat 23-0 in that game. So if I'm looking at their offensive line compared to the Big 12, I still think head and shoulders above. Compared to the rest of the country, I think that's where Texas Tech would like to be talked about, is compared against them. Don't think they're on that level at all. Wide receivers, unproven but talented. Bring in a couple of transfers. Still have former 5-star Micah Hudson. Brought in a top 100 receiver in this freshman class as well. Defense, again, was, you could argue, the best in the country last year, depending on where you look at in advanced stats. But all 4 defensive linemen get drafted. Jacob Rodriguez, like your all-time leading tackle in your program, he's out the door. But they've reloaded 4 transfers plus 5-star LaDainian Guyton out of Georgia. I do think the defense takes a step back. The schedule, again, this is just on a platter for Texas Tech. You avoid BYU and Utah, who are second and third in odds. Your toughest games, I would argue Houston, Arizona, and TCU, all at home. So this lines up very well. They're the best team, despite the noise and all the controversy, Daniel. This is still the best roster in the Big 12. I think this is the best team in the Big 12. And I'll just go ahead and say, I think they repeat as Big 12 champs. I think they're the story you start with. They're the best team. I do think they take a step back overall compared to last year. I don't think it's easy to just replace that 11-1 with your injured quarterback. She probably should have been 12-0 without the injury to Morton. But to be a top 4 seed, to go in there, to have arguably the best defense in the country, I don't think their defense will be on the same level. So I do think they take a step back, but plenty good enough to be the best team in this conference.
Yeah, I think all the Sorsby stuff kind of made people, they're now a villain. They were not a villain last year. And they were a villain to people who were close enough to them, like their rivals and stuff, because they were like, oh, they're spending all this money. And they were shouting at whoever would listen, but they weren't, they were almost a feel-good story because it seemed like it came out of nowhere. They made the playoff, had a high seed this year. With all of that took place, it was one thing that I felt like the college football world united on, was that Brennan Sorsby should absolutely not play. There's precedent, there's all this. And so it would have really turned into a crazy Wild West situation. But yeah, to your point, we were talking through this, and it was baffling about the difference of, is Will Hammond, like, what's wrong with him? I know he tore his ACL last year, but is there something that I'm missing? Because he's plenty good enough for you to win every game on your schedule. I mean, just listen to Texas. They could win with their backups. They could go undefeated on this schedule, which, to be fair, I think is true. You look at this schedule, they don't have BYU on the schedule this year, who's the second best team we'll talk about in just a moment. But I think Will Hammond, that coming back from the ACL, there's a chance he makes the start of the season. There's a chance he misses the start of the season. Now, is that important against Abilene Christian? Maybe not. But, they brought in Kirk Francis, Tulsa transfer at quarterback. So they have a little bit of depth there. Looking at Hammond's body of work, I like what you mentioned about the running game. I mean, he was over 7 yards a carry last year. That's not by accident. 5 touchdowns in the run game, had a 64-yard touchdown run, which is, impressive for a quarterback, saying the least. So 12 touchdowns overall in 6 games played. So that's about what you need on a team that's really talented around you. Production of, 2 touchdowns a game essentially. And so I think that that's what he's good for. I think that he could, progress, but we'll see how much he either helps or holds them back. But I agree with you. I think the rest of the team surrounding him is certainly good enough to run through this schedule. So I'll just kind of jump to the team that I was mentioning that they're missing. So,
What a blessing.
Will BYU be on a mission this year when they don't have to? Sorry, y'all. Low hanging fruit. Will they be on a mission this year when they don't have to play Texas Tech? That was their only loss last year. They lost to them twice. They beat everybody else. Offensively, defensively, they seemed untouchable for much of the season. They, early game against Arizona, I think is going to be a key one. That one's a lot of fun. But yeah, I like that, they've got, seniors all across this offensive line. Bear Bachmeier back. Truthfully, Jacob, I have to continue to hate on him as long as he's going to wear the number 47.
Same.
That's just a principle that we are going to stand by forever. If you are a non-quarterback number, you're just going to get hate on this podcast. You're always going to.
This is a uniform podcast. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah,
we are aesthetically driven. That being said, his freshman year to show up in June. Okay, showing up in June when most any quarterback that's worth his salt is going to show up in, January and be there for spring and start as a freshman, but not only start, but not be erratic. He was able to come in, throw for 3,000 yards and have a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. That's just impressive as a freshman. I think that he takes a big step forward in year 2. If he ever lost that 47 and just went to like a number 10 or 12 or something, he would.
Dude, 219 on a high number.
You're talking about a top 10 type of quarterback one day, but unfortunately, he's going to hold himself back. Anyways, all that to say, I like him in the run game. He had 11 touchdowns, 500 yards of offense, rushing the ball to go along with that, strong passing year as a freshman. His brother is a wide receiver on the team. Jacob, I don't know if you're aware that his brother is named Tiger. I don't know what these parents are doing, but it is what it is. They're raising the wildlife out here. Running back LJ Martin's who I really want to highlight, though. I think that he's going to have a very strong season. He's one of the most prolific running backs in the Big 12 that's returning. I think that he's someone who you've got to watch out for in the run game and the pass game. Had nearly 40 catches last year out of the backfield. So I think that tandem of LJ Martin with Bear Bachmeier is enough for this offense. And defensively, they return 8 starters, a lot of production returning on the defense, especially the back 7. I think that unit is going to be very special. The linebackers and the safeties and the corners, I think that they're going to be able to do some stuff this year. And you look at the schedule, we'll get to the over-unders, but the only thing I'm concerned about, since they don't play Texas Tech, they're going to play Notre Dame. That's the only out-of-conference game that I'm even concerned about. Everything else within conference, I feel pretty good about. Feel like they're on the up and up. So maybe this is their year. They could be tops of the Big 12 this year. That would not surprise me.
I'll say with schedule is, last year we saw a team that went 11-1 in the regular season, 2 lost with the conference championship, but we saw that BYU was not considered for the playoff at 11-2.
Right.
So to me, they've either got to go win the Big 12, which in that case, who cares that Notre Dame's on your schedule? Because you're going to get an auto bid if you win the Big 12. So it is mission, win the conference. Or I do think adding Notre Dame to your schedule, if you win that game, I do think you buy yourself an extra buffer. So you
only helps you, yeah.
You could go 11-2 this year with that loss being to Notre Dame, and I think you're much more likely to make the playoff. So I do think regardless, having Notre Dame on the schedule is a good thing for BYU because it only bolsters their strength of schedule. It won't hurt them in the Big 12 as far as making the conference championship game if they lose. Only helps them if they win. So I do think it's a win for BYU if they're looking towards the playoff. Daniel, I wanted to go, when I think about storylines this year in the Big 12, my mind after Texas Tech, the second thing I went to is Oklahoma State. And you know that I'm a big Bill Conley guy. And, ESPN made a college football preview magazine this year. Pretty good. Check it out. I checked it out because I love Bill Connelly. And Daniel, would it surprise you for me to tell you that he has Oklahoma State in the college football playoff as his
wow,
ultimate dark horse? And
he at least he's calling it a dark horse. Yes,
he said this is his longest shot. This is his SP Plus says one thing. He's just trying to put the pieces together of, hey, if there's an out there team that makes it, who is it? Who's the crazy? It is 12 teams. Who's that gets in at number 11 that we're not thinking of? And it's Oklahoma State. And the thing with Oklahoma State is if there's a team, Daniel, that's going to replicate Indiana, it's going to be Oklahoma State. This is basically import half the roster from North Texas with Eric Morris. And I mean, I want to call this out too, man. Mike Gundy, legend, greatest coach in Oklahoma State history. It was time for a change.
Yeah.
They bring in Eric Morris, North Texas coach, both coordinators, 62 transfers, including 18 from North Texas. 62. So you got to think, the 1-11 team from last year, this is not remotely close. There's nothing you can take from that team to what this team can do this year. And honestly, it is a huge question mark because they absolutely could go 1-11 again. I don't think it's insane to say they go 11-1 either, because it's just completely different. We're still trying to figure this out. To be fair, I don't think they're going 11-1. I don't think they're making the playoff either. But I think it's interesting if you're trying to say, is what Indiana did replicable in 2026? I think the answer to that is this is the formula, per se, of import the G5 coach with both coordinators, veteran roster, lots of transfers that could have immediate success in year one because they've played together already. This is the team that could do it. Plus, you've got, again, if you're looking at the Indiana formula, you've got a quarterback that has first-round buzz and Mestamaker. This could be this team could look like, Daniel, this team could look like the Oklahoma State we came to love growing up, which is the high-powered offense, a lot of points both ways, Gundy Oklahoma State spread offenses, because I do think this will be a rebuilding year on defense, but I think this team will be explosive. The win total is at 6.5. And so, I went in thinking, man, I bet Vegas has this win total at 3.5, 4.5. I'm going to be way over. I'm not way over the Vegas win total. Vegas obviously thinks there's something here as well to go from a 1-win team and put them as we think they're making a bowl game period at 6.5 wins. Vegas believes I'm over the win total. I think they get to 7-5 this year, 6-1 improvement, which would be one of the best year-over-year improvements in the country as far as total wins. They are extremely intriguing to me. They will be an exciting watch. I will have my eye on Oklahoma State this fall. Very interesting team and story to follow.
Yeah, when you and I were kind of divvying up some of these teams to dive into, definitely felt like we were going to fight over Oklahoma State. I think this just, if there's one story, if there's a team that I'm most excited to watch in the Big 12, this is them.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
With this offense that Eric Morris became famous for, they try to snap the ball every 8 seconds. I think this is something that it's tough to implement in years past. This type of takeover, Jacob, if you did this 5 years ago, 4 years ago even, I feel like this is something where you're not bringing in as many transfers. You might have a guy or two, and you're really having to coach from the ground up. Using the model, like you mentioned, of Indiana, being able to bring these guys in, this type of offense can be successful early. The problem with usually hiring a guy that runs something like this is it takes a lot of buy-in, a lot of time. Like you said, 62 new guys, that's just the nature of, everybody's new, so they're all buying in together. And then 18 guys, like you mentioned, are the nucleus. They're the guys that already know what's going on. So, yeah, there's a lot to like here. I mean, I don't think we can talk enough about Caleb Hawkins. There's a lot of good running backs in the Big 12 this year, and he's someone who led the league led his league last year in touchdowns in 25. And I think that's something that's going to be overlooked, I think, is usually when you talk about going fast, everybody's thinking about throwing things over the top. I mean, nearly 1,500 yards last year. I'm excited to see, what he has to to do in that offense. And yeah, they're just going to be a watchable team again, man. They were unwatchable last year. You weren't tuning into Oklahoma State for Oklahoma State. You were tuning in for whoever they were playing. And I think that changes this year. I think all the eyes are going to be on them. And they're a fun pick, man. I like that Bill Connolly, made that fun, bold prediction. We'll see what comes of it. And, definitely a prolific offense. We'll see if the defense is able to hang in there enough and see what all translates. This will be another, if this is successful, Jacob, then I think you're going to see this change across the landscape. Because obviously Indiana did it with, Cignetti going from JMU to Indiana. If it's able to be replicated and it's not just a one-shot deal, then I think that you're going to see a lot of big programs take this chance of, I'm going to hire the FCS guy so long that he brings everybody with him,
Like Auburn, but with USF. We'll see. We'll get there.
We'll see what Auburn's doing. Yeah. But this one I really like, especially the competition they're playing. I think that they can do some stuff in the conference. But that one's very fun. I'm going to jump into my next one, which is another kind of revitalization. This is a team that, had this head coach last year. You and I were joking, oh yeah, he's new to the Big 12 this year. He's back, which is West Virginia with Rich Rodriguez. Of course, he was there last year. You and I just, we didn't care to notice at the time. But
Forgot.
Look, it happens. I knew he left Jacksonville State and I knew he went there. I just also forgot. There's a lot of moving pieces around here. But that being said, West Virginia, man, year 2 of the Rich Rod return. Last year goes 4-8. That's more like what happens typically when you bring in a guy to have to rebuild kind of a program. Had struggling offense last year. They have gone to the transfer portal. They have revitalized that offensive line. They brought back renowned offensive line coach Rick Trickett. I think that that's going to revitalize. Really, the most important part of Rich Rodriguez offense is that offensive line, because they do the inverted veer spread offense where they run the quarterback. It looks like an option. It looks like, at times it looks like a spread. You don't know what you're getting with it, but I like that they brought in transfer Michael Hawkins Jr. out of Oklahoma. He's got some experience, but he had limited success. I don't think he had a good quarterback coach with him that can use his strength. So you've got that as your starting quarterback this year. And really, I think the thing I'm most excited about, man, I'm going to be hitting on the running backs this year, but Cam Cook transferring in from Jacksonville State, where Rich Rod was from. He led the league in rushing yards last year, nearly 1,700 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns. I mean, he was impressive. So having him come in and just kind of be that thumper that you need and really helps you at running back. I like what I see from both of them. Defensively, it's all new transfers. They're bringing everybody in. It was a rough year last year. Their win total's at 5.5, so this isn't to puff them up, but this is another one of those, we have these kind of, Oklahoma State's we don't really know what we're going to get from them. That's kind of the same for West Virginia. If you told me, hey, they're going to lose, 10 games. Okay, well, that they weren't too far off of that last year. If you told me, hey, they win 9 games this year, that would still, while it would surprise me, that wouldn't surprise me because there's a lot of moving pieces here, all the transfers. I think that if Rich Rod can kind of get back to what he likes to do in this offense, I mean, they've got a lot of good momentum. As far as their schedule is concerned, they do play at Texas Tech. And then, there's a handful of games where it's, these middling teams. Them playing Virginia this year on a neutral site, that one's going to be tough. Virginia went to the ACC championship last year, so that one will be fun. But I think the moral of this is this West Virginia team is going to be watchable again. And that's, I think, if you're a West Virginia fan, that's obviously great news. But if you're just a college football fan, you get to enjoy Rich Rod with some pieces that maybe make it look more like it used to.
Yeah, did you say total number of transfers? Did you see this?
No, 85. I didn't say it. Yeah, it's 80. Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's 85 new players.
85 new players. Yeah.
85 new players. So I think it's 60-something transfers.
I think this is why we were joking before we got on. I'm like, dude, we threw out when I threw out West Virginia. It's like, oh yeah, it's year 2. Maybe like that's the reason. Anyway, this seems like a complete transition year with 85 new players, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's year 2. It's just weird. And I mean, again, kid Jacob is rooting for West Virginia to be good again. So excited to see. Excited to see what Rich Rod does in year 2. Maybe year 3 is the big jump for him.
Does Tavon Austin have a kid somewhere that's about to get recruited? Because that'd be awesome.
Pat White's getting his number retired. Maybe that's the good luck they need.
Yeah.
Daniel, I want to go to the team, the third best odds to win the Big 12, the Utah Utes. Kyle Whittingham, out the door. Like it just, what was it, 20? How many seasons was it? No, not 20. No, it was. He was it 19 or 20 seasons? Because he was Urban Meyer's successor at Utah, which is crazy.
So that was 2005. Exactly 20 seasons.
They had named 2 years ago or 3 years ago that Morgan Scalley was the head coach in waiting once Kyle Whittingham retired. Reading the tea leaves, sounds like Whittingham was obviously not done coaching. I don't think he retired this year thinking Michigan would come open, surely, but he retires. Sounds like maybe that was Utah saying, hey, we've named Morgan Scalley the head coach in waiting. He got to go at some point. We'll see. None of that's confirmed, but Morgan Scalley in. And here's the thing, because of that, Daniel, I think this is the same old Utah. Now, Kyle Whittingham did take Tim Beck with him to Michigan, who really helped turn the Utah offense around. Morgan Scalley hired Kevin McGinn from Utah State to come in and run basically the same system that Beck installed. All 5 starters from the offensive line are gone, but Daniel, I also just trust Utah. Utah has built a brand on being really strong on both lines of scrimmage. They had 2 players go in the first round off the offensive line. They're kind of a development machine on offensive line, so they've just earned my blanket trust that Utah is going to have one of the best offensive lines in the Big 12. They're going to be a physical football team. Dampier's elite and elusive. He played like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. When he was healthy last year, he did battle injury. You're at least starting the season with a fully healthy quarterback. Wayshawn Parker, he was second behind Jeremiah Love in yards per carry from running back, so should have a really powerful run game again. Defensively, Daniel, it's Utah. Defensive back is really stout. They have one of the best defensive back rooms in the entire country. They are a Big 12 title contender, period. I know it's a new head coach, but with the guy who's been there for a long time, with Kyle Whittingham, it just seems like the same old Utah. They have an elite quarterback. They're going to be elites on the lines of scrimmage. They're going to be really physical in a conference where they can kind of out-physical most teams with the type of player they have on the offensive and defensive line. So they're, to me, clearly in that either top tier or tier right under Texas Tech if you're going to put them on a tier by themselves. They're a Big 12 title contender. Would not at all surprise me if they are in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, 11 wins last year. Their only 2 losses were to the 2 that played in the title game. So BYU and Texas Tech are their 2 losses. And then Texas Tech rolls off the schedule this year by happenstance. So they only have BYU of those, and they play BYU at home, which we know how Utah is at home. So you got to like all of that. Game. Yes.
Always.
Yes.
So good.
Obviously, yes. So, and dude, we're not. I'm just saying, November 7th, that's another November 7th game. And while every Saturday is precious, I think that one may be the best. So several great games that day. I think I've already mentioned on the ACC one, but Notre Dame, Miami, you've got Ole Miss and Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and then you've got this game. So that's just an awesome day. So great game there. I agree with you. I think that they definitely get overlooked, and that's crazy. So we'll see what they can do. Maybe they make their own little push for the playoff. So I'm going to go to another team, Jacob, that we always seem to overlook. Last year they were your champion. I overlooked them, rightfully so, I'll say. That's Kansas State, the other KSU, as I like to say. Kansas State comes in. Will the return of Colin Klein be enough to push them over the edge or to make them realize their potential. They're an 8.5 win total projection this year. Avery Johnson, stop me if you've heard that name before. He's been there 38 years. He's their starting quarterback, but he was there long enough to be there when Colin Klein was the offensive coordinator. So Colin Klein, of course, left for the past year to be Texas A&M's offensive coordinator and has now returned with Kleiman retiring. So I'm looking forward to this. I think that it's really important that someone like Colin Klein, who's played there, coached there, and
Legend.
also coached in at the SEC, coached at the highest level, gone to the playoffs. I think that's all very, very good for Kansas State. He comes back and he's able to put his touch back on this offense, which desperately needs it. I think that you're going to get the most out of Avery Johnson. Joe Jackson returning at running back. He had just a short stint last year as a starter, but had a game where he ran over nearly 300 yards last year against Iowa State. So, or not Iowa State, against Utah. I'm looking at the wrong schedule, but I think that he's someone who you could see kind of getting thrust into that starting role and really thriving this year. Going through their schedule, you start to notice, they miss a lot of teams. They miss BYU and Texas Tech. So, they don't, and they also miss Utah. So as far as a favorable schedule, this is probably the most favorable of all of the top teams because they don't have to play those other big heavy hitters. So that's probably a little bit why it's an 8.5 win total for them. They get kind of the benefit of the doubt, but as I was counting their losses, Jacob, the most I could see them having is 4. So I think their floor is 8-4 this year, and I have them at 9-3. So I'm excited to see what Kansas State does this year. I'm bullish on the return of Colin Klein.
I'm also bullish on the return of Colin Klein, and I also have them at 9-3.
Look at that.
And look, is Avery Johnson the best quarterback in the Big 12? Some said last year that he was the best quarterback in the Big 12. That would be me, Daniel. I said that last year. I don't know how I feel this year. I mean, that's a question you asked me, though. I mean, let's have the conversation.
Yeah, so that's one thing we're wanting to figure out. I led into this with a little bit more of an idea. I said, I believed a certain person was the best quarterback in the Big 12. You and I both kind of went to work and looking some things up. This is a good conference for quarterbacks. You've got guys like Connor Wegman at Houston. You've got Michael Hawkins Jr. coming in at West Virginia, kind of unproven. You got DJ Lagway transferring in to Baylor, coming back home. You got Bear Bachmeier, Will Hammond, we've already mentioned him. You've got Drew Mustamaker, who maybe is the most prolific if you go in just by stats alone. Avery Johnson, you just mentioned. He's been there for a long time, and he's Mr. He's I don't know if I almost said Mr. Consistent. I feel weird saying that, but he's been pretty consistent. He's a 58% completion percentage guy. And then he's run for over nearly 500 yards each year. So the guy I like the most, I think, is Noah Fifita, and that's Arizona. I think that's a team that gets lost a lot as far as, where they are, the time they play. People forget they're part of the Big 12. I know I do pretty much every time. They went 9-4 last year, 9-3 regular season. And Fifita is a guy that's been there since 2022. And so it's one of those things where you're like, man, this is his 5th year. He's had 2 years of more than 20 touchdowns, nearly 30 touchdowns those years. He had one, blip his junior year, redshirt sophomore, whatever we're calling it, where he had 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, just kind of that transition phase. But he seemed to get back on track last year, 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, QBR over 70, rushed for, 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards. I really like him. I think he's electric, and I think his legs are important, but it's really the downfield throwing when he's on the run. They had the anonymous coaches, of course, in Athlon, and that's what they were talking about, was his ability to extend plays and just really find guys down the field. that's big when you're, under 6 feet tall. So I think that's something that you have to do. But he's a guy that I really, if I was hanging my hat on somebody this year, I would say I think he's the class of the Big 12. But I think guys like Mestamaker by the end of the year and guys like Connor Wegman, those would probably be the two that I have on his heels. And God, Barry Bachmeier changes that number, man. He's right up there too.
You left one off, Daniel. Devin Dampier, best quarterback in the Big 12. I think that's my answer. And here's my am I saying who's had the best career so far in the Big 12? It's Noah Fifita. Absolutely. It's who do I think could, if I'm giving out a quarterback MVP award for the Big 12 this year, I think I'm going Devin. I think I'd go between three. I think I'd go Dampier, Mestamaker. Bear Bachmeier's a good answer. I think I'd put him. And honestly, the more we talked about it, I'd made the joke about Avery Johnson. I'm putting him in the category. I've not given up yet because I was just looking this up. Do you know who his primary recruiter was when he got recruited to Kansas State?
Was it Colin Klein?
It was Colin Klein because he was the offensive coordinator. On 3 and Rivals, their player comp, Pat White. Come on. I do think with that style offense, with the offensive-minded coach who recruited him, who's a former OC, a Kansas State guy, I'm excited about Avery Johnson. But I do think Devin Dampier, when he was healthy last year, he was so fun to watch. He's electric. Beautiful downfield ball, really quick and twitchy. I think he'd be my answer for who's the best quarterback in the Big 12 is Devin Dampier at Utah. I'm a big Devin Dampier fan. Daniel, let's run through win totals. We'll go in alphabetical order here. We'll give an over-under. We've talked about several of these teams. Speaking of Noah Fifita, Daniel, Arizona, 7.5 the win total. Where are you going with the Wildcats?
Yeah, they're a good team. They have a tougher schedule. They're at BYU this year. They at Texas Tech. At Kansas State could get, salty late in the year. You got to think that there's, they get Utah at home. So they have to play all of these top teams. The only one of that group, they're playing every good team in the Big 12, the ones that you would probably highlight as your favorites. So for that reason, 7.5 is a great line. I like them at 8-4, but I mean, if I'm being honest, they might stub their toes somewhere. If I'm picking Noah Fifita as the top quarterback, I'm going to have to give them 8-4. So let me go over. I'm going to talk myself into it, but that's a great line. 7.5. I could see, because they have to play all of those top teams, dropping each of them, but maybe they have a big win along the way, get them to 8-4.
I'm a believer in Arizona because I think they have the toughest schedule in the Big 12. They draw 6 of the top 7. Star of their team last year, which won 9 games, was their defensive backs. All 4 got drafted. I think I get to 7.75. So I do think 8-4 is the number. It's a really good line. I wouldn't be surprised if they go under that. But no confidence there. But I'm going over for the Wildcats. What about Daniel? Dude, 2 years ago, they're in the playoff as a top 4 seed. Arizona State, their win total at 6.5 for Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. Where are you going there?
Yeah, they brought in Cutter Boley at quarterback, the University of Kentucky quarterback last year, who down the stretch looked pretty good. This schedule gets tough though. They're playing at Texas A&M. They have Kansas on a neutral field, but they've got at Texas Tech, they've got Kansas State, at BYU, Oklahoma State late in the year, and then at Arizona. I mean, I've got several losses for them. They went 8-5 last year. I think they regressed a little bit. I've got them at 6-6, so that puts them slightly under that number.
I get it. I get to 6.75. I'll go 7-5 barely. It's a really good line here. I could see it going either way, but I will go over for Arizona State. The Baylor Bears, their win total is also 6.5. Where are you going with the Bears?
Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, I love that they brought in Lagway. He's coming home. He's from Texas. This is a good story. He's just someone who we've seen flashes of. I'm not going to put all of this on the quarterback. They've got a lot going on. Dave Aranda has fought for his life several times and gotten, where he got himself on and off the hot seat several times. So this is going to be a tough year. He's going to be battling that. They start against Auburn on a neutral field. Auburn did them a solid by moving the game to Atlanta instead of playing in the Plains. So that helps them, but they lost to Auburn last year. Auburn is supposed to be better. Not hanging all of this up on that. Looking through, they've got BYU at BYU. They got Texas Tech at Houston to end the year. I think is a good game, a good team. They're at 6.5. I'm gonna go slightly over. I'm gonna say 7-5.
I'm going under, Daniel. I get to 5.5 wins when I go through the schedule. They lost 10 starters off their elite passing offense from last year. Defense looks to be rebuilt, but Daniel, Dave Aranda's 36-37 at Baylor. It's just a 500 coach. I think that's where we've had plenty of data now to look at like where he is, and 6-6 seems like a bit to me what Baylor's going to do this year. That's where I've got him. I go under. I get to 5.5 wins. Numbers is 6.5. Yeah, I'm on the under for the Bears. BYU, their win total is at 8.5. Daniel, where are you going with the Cougars?
To me, that seems low. I like BYU over that. I like them at 10 wins, potentially 11. They've got Notre Dame on the schedule is my only one that I circle and say I don't see them winning this game, but everything else I think they're in the game. They obviously have that game against Utah that's going to be tough. Arizona is going to be tough. You know, they got a handful of them down the stretch, but I mean, really, I think that they're a strong team against this schedule. So give me the over emphatically.
Daniel, last year I was not a true believer in BYU, and I carried that over, and that I've switched this pick. I think I've gone back and forth 3 times today. I think I'm back where I started. I'm on the over, barely. I have them at 9-3. I get to 9 wins. I think you add a full loss with Notre Dame on the schedule. So I think like schedule from last year, you add a full loss. My other loss comes from the fact that they were 3-0 in one-score games last year, and their quarterback wears number 47. I think that accounts for adding another loss on the schedule.
I think we've mentioned that more than any other show, and I'm not surprised, number one, and number two, why are people not talking about this?
Yeah, why are you not freaked out when you see it?
It is a big deal. This should be, it's jarring when you watch
national news.
I like to turn the game off if they're on, you know, I can't do it. So
yeah, I can't watch it. It makes me sick to my stomach.
When they're on defense, I'm like, okay, let's watch this game. And then they come back out on offense and I'm like,
dude, did they just run a fullback draw? That they're tied in, pass the ball? What happened just now?
Dude.
Yeah, confusing as heck. I'm still over, but I'm trusting. I like Kalani Sitake a lot. He's built a really good culture at BYU. Yeah. I'm trusting them despite my doubts here. 8.5 is a good number, I think. I think there's a reason it's 8.5 and not 9.5. I'll say that. I think that's the I think it's more likely they win 8 games than they win 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel confident saying that. And again, could be wrong. That's my pick. Cincinnati, Daniel, their win total is at 5.5. Where are you at with the Bearcats?
Yeah, this team's tough to read. I'm just going based off of they do have to play the top echelon of the conference this year. They do get all of BYU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Utah. They play them all. They play at Arizona. So there's a lot that leaves you worried. Obviously, they lost Sorsby, which is a big deal. They probably shouldn't have had him last year, but that's neither here nor there. All that said, I'm under. I don't think that they're going to have a very good season, and all vibes are down for sure. I don't know. Scott Satterfield may be on the way out.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I get to exactly 5.5 when I do it. I think it's a really good number. I'm pushed to. I will lean under. I think it's a 5-7 year. Yeah, I think losing a generational quarterback, you can bet on the fact that that's gonna cause some extra losses on there. So maybe Sorsby's taking the under on Cincinnati this year. We'll have to see. But give me the under on Cincinnati. Colorado, Daniel. Is this the quietest Colorado offseason since Deion got there? I have not heard one word on Colorado except for when Deion was speaking at media days about how the reason he's not in the EA college football game is because they didn't pay enough. And I was like, that's funny. That's the first time I've heard about Colorado this offseason.
Yeah,
Four and
this
a half.
one, 4.5, I think, is there for a reason. As I count losses on this Colorado team, I've got them at 8 losses. So I am slightly under at 4-8. I think it's a good line, though. This one, though, Jacob, I'm circling. I'm saying, if they have a big, if Julian Lewis is able to kind of transcend, because he's a 5-star quarterback. He graduated early, so he's going to be playing, basically like his senior year, playing right now. We'll see how he plays. He's a small dude, but he's a very, very talented player, and he's the kind of guy who could make a lot of plays in this offense. We'll see. It does seem like this is starting to become kind of a dumpster fire. So if you don't have these elite players propping you up, it's going to be a rough year. So Colorado 4-8, I'm under, but I'm excited to see what Julian Lewis has to do this year. He's a local guy here out of the Atlanta area, Carrollton.
Under. I get the 4 wins. Yeah, under for me as well. Houston, Daniel, 8.5 wins, third highest win total in the Big 12. No, it's second. It's tied for second. I don't think anyone else is above 8.5. It is, yes, it's tied for second best win total in the Big 12. 8.5 for the Houston Cougars. What do you got?
Yeah, 10-win year last year. Willie Fritz really just kind of
love Willie Fritz.
He's getting his program going the way he likes it. Connor Wegman, we mentioned him when we were talking about quarterbacks. I think he's very talented. Obviously, he transferred from Texas A&M a couple years ago. He's been at Houston, and he's a special player. He's a former 5-star, so you've got talent there, and now you've got just time on task with this offense with Willie Fritz. And you got returning players, which I think is maybe the biggest deal. So, you've got like 12 returning starters. I think that you start to stack those kinds of, roster retention in this day and age, I think is very important. So I like them. They do have Texas Tech and Utah and Kansas State all on the schedule, and it's all on the road. So that's tough, but we're just talking 8.5 wins. I think that they could go over. I think they could go 9-3 this year. So I'm going to go with that. I think they win one of those tough games against those teams we mentioned, and maybe drop one to like someone we're not expecting, like Oklahoma State or Baylor or West Virginia, someone like that. So I've got them at 9-3.
You'll hear me say this a lot. I've said it in our last 2 preview episodes. Something I look at a lot with win totals is how did you perform in 1-score games last year? And then do I think you're going to be better or worse? Because I do think a lot of 1-score games, some of it is culture, right? Some of it is, are you a team that just finds a way to win? And there is some luck in there, right? As far as like, it's a weird shaped ball. It bounces one way. The game goes the other direction. Houston was 6-1 in 1-score games last year. So I typically, when I see a number like that, I tend to go, okay, what if that becomes 5-2 or 4-3 in 1-score games? So I get to 8.25 wins. I'm at 8-4 with Houston. I think I'm on the under slightly, but would not be surprised if they hit a 9 or 10 win mark at all. No confidence there, but I'm on the under for Houston. Daniel, what about Iowa State? Iowa State, man. Iowa State is a sad case because I think when Matt Campbell was finally targeted by Penn State they should have started with Matt Campbell for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Daniel, my take on Iowa State is that you're going to see why Matt Campbell was the greatest coach in Iowa State history over the next 4 years. And that's no offense to anybody there, but Matt Campbell is an incredible coach, and the win total is at 4.5. I'm on the under. This is, 16 new starters from the G6, FCS, and D2. Head coach and double coordinator new, complete rebuild year. I think this is 4-8 or worse.
Yeah, this is gonna be a bad year. They're projected 16th in the Big 12. There's not too much to say. It's gonna be tough, like you said. It's just the timing as well. Like you're talking about the timing of the coaching change because Campbell was hired so late by Penn State that hurts things as well. It almost sets you back even one more year for Iowa State. So, it's going to be rough. But yeah, RIP Iowa State. I have them on the under. I have them at 2 wins.
2 win. Wow. Yeah, just wouldn't surprise me. Not rooting for that. Rooting for Iowa State. I like Iowa State. Good people, good colors, good uniforms when they don't wear black. Kansas, 6.5. Jalen Daniels out the door, projected to make a bowl game still. Where are you at with the Jayhawks?
Yeah, I mean 6.5. That's. I think that's a. I think they are not quite there. I like them at about 5-7 on this schedule. Looking through, they're just replacing too much for me. I don't think they're going to be able to replicate what they've done the past few years. Jalen Daniels, big deal. I mean, they've had him as a starter for 4 years, so really that change I think is going to be enough for them to take a step back. So give me the under, Kansas.
Both of us on the under. Kansas State, we've talked about win totals at 8.5. We're both on the over. I just wanted to add that they avoid BYU, Texas Tech, and Utah on the schedule. And the more we talk about it, Daniel, the more I think that Colin Klein's going to do with Avery Johnson what he did with Marcel Reed.
Yeah,
over.
I think that's exactly what I think. When you think about overs, we talk about we already talked about the schedule, but I think just highlight the out of conference schedule. Nichols, Washington State, Tulane. Tulane normally is a good pull, but they've been obviously losing their head coach, losing several players transferring out and everything like that. So I think you have a very easy 3 wins in the non-conference. So I think that helps pad these stats over.
Oklahoma State, man, I wish so badly this win total was like at 4.5 so I could make it a best bet. It's not a best bet for me, but I am over, which I've talked about and why. I do think they get to 7-5. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm with you on the over. I think 7-5 is a good spot to be. I can see them going 8-4 if things go right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they were 9-3, I think a lot of people would be excited. But they do have Oregon on the schedule. Obviously, they have Texas Tech as well. So those are kind of keeping me from being like, this isn't going to be special. But
for sure,
add that out of conference flair. So over though.
TCU. Daniel, 4 years ago, they were entering a season in which they would have gone undefeated and played for a national championship. Their win total is now at 6.5, same as Oklahoma State. Where are you going with the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, 9 games, 9-game winner last year, 8-4 during the regular season. They don't return a ton, but I'm interested to see the job that Sonny Dykes does. They've kind of gotten forgotten about. I have them slightly over. I have them at 7-5.
I think it's an 8-4 team, Daniel. I get to 7.5 wins and I go through it. This is my. Well, we'll get to dark horse. They're not my dark horse I'm going to pick, but would not surprise me to see them move themselves into the tier of Texas Tech, BYU, Utah. Would not be surprised if TCU is that 4th team following them. So I'm pretty high on TCU this year. Yeah, they were a lot better than their record last year if you look at power ratings. Yeah, anyway, I'm very high in TCU. More on them in just a little bit. Texas Tech, we talked about at 10.5. I'm a push to over. I get to exactly 10.5. I think this is probably an 11-1 team, Daniel. Where are you at with the Red Raiders?
Yeah, over. They missed BYU this year.
And Utah.
And even though Hammond may not be ready for the start of the season, I think he'll be ready at some point, and I think they'll have a good season. Their schedule lines up really well for them. So I'm over. I think they're a very, very good team.
UCF, Daniel, the 9th win total at 5.5. Where do they go from here? I mean, this is one of those teams that I was excited to see in the Big 12. They've kind of been, again, just middling and not great. Where are you at with the Knights?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where they're gonna be having a tough season. I think Pitt in the non-con I think is gonna be tough. A couple of teams that I think that Oklahoma State and Houston, they have to go on the road in those games, so I don't feel great. They come home, play Baylor. It's just one of these teams that I think a lot of people circle and expect that to be a win on their schedule. So I'm actually on the under. I think 4 or 5 wins is kind of where I'm at with UCF this year.
I'm over. This is a team I'm over by almost a full game. I think this is a bowl team. I'm so in on Scott Frost back at UCF. Alex Grinch's defense also there's a name. Alex Grinch, defensive coordinator at UCF. He had them top 5 in opponent adjusted metrics in the Big 12 last year, and they can improve because they weren't great with turnovers. They've got a quarterback that I think fits Scott Frost's system. They play the bottom 3 teams in the Big 12 in Kansas, Colorado, and Iowa State. I'm over on UCF and rooting for them. I really want this to work out. The schedule, playing Pitt on the road at a conference isn't great, but I'm slightly over. I think this is a bowl team, 6-6 in year 2 for UCF. Utah, I've talked about a bit. 8.5 the win total. I'm over. I get to 9.25 wins. I think this is a 9-3 team. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm over as well. I think they're. I think it's easy to see them winning 9 games. I have them right there pushing 10 wins. So give me the over for the Utes.
Yeah, and I think too with that schedule, I mean, pretty good time to get Arkansas at home.
Oh yeah,
really great time to get Arkansas at home.
You honestly, you'll take Arkansas home or road. You just want them on the schedule.
You want them on the schedule this year. West Virginia, we talked about them a little bit. 5.5 the win total. I am push in my believe in Rich Rod gets them to 6-6. I get to exactly 5.5, but I will take the over if you're making me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I like them as a bowl team. We talked about when you're trying to figure these games out, what's their non-conference look like? Coastal Carolina, Tennessee, Martin, those are obviously 2 must-wins. They can't be drop anything to those teams, but you look at Virginia on a neutral field, that's a big show-me game. That's week 3. I think it's good that it's not week 1 for them. I think they need to kind of get their season under the belt a little bit. And then, I like them getting to a bowl game. I think 6 wins is kind of the number. If they overachieve, I could see them getting up to 8 wins, but I think 6 wins is where I've got them.
Daniel, best bets for the Big 12. I've got 2. All right, and these both neither one of them as confident as my ACC best bets.
Okay.
Baylor under 6.5 is a best bet for me. TCU over 6.5. So two 6.5 win total teams that I think are going to have very different seasons. Baylor and TCU, both Texas schools. I'm under on Baylor, over on TCU. Those are my 2 best bets in the Big 12. What you got?
I just got one best bet, and it's not the most fun one, but BYU, I've got them at 10 wins, and I think that they could go 12. They could go 12-0, and
it's 8.5.
8.5 to me just seems low, and so I feel like that's an easy hammer it down, lock it in. BYU over.
I love it. BYU over 8.5. Who's your dark horse team? What's a team that maybe you're not picking, but you're like a team outside of the top 3 in odds? So odds right now, you've got Texas Tech at plus 100, by far the odds-on favorite. BYU plus 600, Utah plus 850. Everyone else after that is at least 14-1 to win the conference. Who's your dark horse that you're like, man, if it's going to be outside the top 3, maybe it's this team?
Yeah, if it's outside those top 3, I mean, you and I kind of gave you the big eyes before we started recording, saying that you may have been a year too early on Kansas State. I like Kansas State this year. So if there is a dark horse that I could see sliding in to the Big 12 championship, absolutely, I like Kansas State.
Kansas State is also my answer. I will give you one more. Oklahoma State at 27-1 odds.
Fun.
Very dark horse.
So fun.
But I think,
and they're Cowboys, so they're used to being a dark horse, so they can ride the horse, save a cowboy, whatever it is.
That was great. Daniel, Big 12 conference championship game. Who's going to be in Arlington? Who's going to win the Big 12 this year?
All right. You ready to be bored? I've got BYU and Texas Tech repeating getting to the Big 12 championship. Utah honorable mention. I mean, they're right there, but I like BYU. because the schedule, man, the schedule.
Yeah.
If we're going on the caliber of teams, I think Utah might edge them out. But they play, but that's it. I think BYU, BYU and Texas Tech. I think this just for me, it's too good of a chance for both of them to make it. So yeah, I'm gonna be boring. I'm gonna take the top two. What say you?
Who wins?
Oh, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
So
Texas Tech repeats as Big 12 champs. I'm also boring. I'm taking Texas Tech over BYU for the conference championship game, and I cannot wait for Utah and Kansas State to be in this game. Going to be a great uniform matchup. Whenever, no, I do think it's Texas Tech and BYU. I also wrote down or Utah instead of BYU. It will be interesting because I think that they could have the same record. Utah could beat BYU, but BYU could play for the conference title because I think one of BYU's losses is going to come to Notre Dame, which will be out of conference. So, and with that, Daniel, I do think, not that we're fully projecting playoff yet, but I think Texas Tech will be the only team from the Big 12 to make the playoff. I don't think they're getting to, unless BYU goes 12-0 and their one loss is the Big 12 conference title game. I think they're in at that point, but even at 11-1, I think it's the double-edged sword of your only loss was Notre Dame. It's like, yeah, but that's like the one playoff team you faced. The other one's Texas Tech, and you lost both. I don't think it's setting up well for a second team from the Big 12. I don't think any of their schedules will be good enough. I mean, I think it's more likely a 9-win Big 10 or SEC team gets in over, for sure, over a 10-win Big 12 team, and maybe even over an 11.
Yeah, the only thing I could see is the SEC being somewhat penalized for going 9 games and there being extra losses.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way, but I agree with you. I think that if there is a way for them to actually look past wins and losses, I think they're probably going to say 9-win SEC, Big 10, whoever, over these Big 12 teams. So it's probably still a one-team conference, just like the ACC.
Love it. We will be back next time for our Big 10 preview. Where feel it in the air, getting close. Nice and hot outside, but it won't be here shortly as we get closer to football season. Be sure to follow us here at the Extra Point Pod. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.